І зараз за підтримки фонду відродження і в рамках українського медіа.
Continue with our press briefings. Mr. Dmytro Shymkiv, Presidential Administration Deputy Chief, who will discuss implementation of reforms in Ukraine. This press briefing is supported by the International Renaissance Foundation. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank everybody here. My esteemed ladies and gentlemen, today as usual, Tuesday we are making our updates. Recently we discussed the topic of civil service reform. One of the elements has to do with an instrument developed by a group of experts, temporary civil service, reform of civil service, and the National Agency of Civil Service is a big, formidable task, quite necessary for the state, because reform of civil service, together with decentralization and together with division of powers, starting from grassroots level to the central agency officials, and job description, responsibility for the civil servants, housekeeping matters, values, competencies, and all that. This is quite important, and this is done by Mr. Vashchenko, who is including many experts. I would like to tell you again that we had a roundtable recently discussing such ideas, such interventions, and now we are making the interventions for reform of the civil service of Ukraine. We are planning on a very big conference this Friday to discuss reform of civil service in Ukraine. I wanted to present the following. One of the elements, or a temporary element, a temporary instrument, let's call it, based on experience of other jurisdictions where business agents are invited for civil service, for promotion of the civil service, its performance in the state. Currently, we have a big need for senior officials, heads of departments, as we call them, involvement of business managers, business entrepreneurs, understand economic processes, and have a totally different experience of housekeeping, reform, and change management. And also, we have one limitation. This is decent payment for such workers. They are patriotic, of course, but such people having made big investments in their career development, their education, would like to be involved for certain remuneration. So, what is this temporary mechanism of hiring to governmental service? This is not replacement of the reform. This is assistance to reform. The mechanism should be transparent, independent, and open. I would like to show a slide how we involve specialists to governmental service. We have a state employer, the candidate, and agency where they would work. Here you can see open vacancy at state agency that announces competition to take the position. Then resume is offered. Then the foundation checks the candidates on conformity to conditions and lack of conflict of interest. Then a list of candidates are submitted that are checked by this foundation. The third stage, a state agency makes decision about specific candidate regardless of others, and when decision is made, the
a person is leaving their today's job, and there is side agreement between the state agency, future employee, and the agency. All this work should be transparent about the work, and when this public agreement is signed, the level of remuneration is discussed and approved, and the lack of conflict of interest is stated. Then state agency will accept the person to their work. They will, the foundation will give additional remuneration. The key performance indicators are always checked while the worker is doing his job industriously. So the time of employment is up to 2 years. Can it be cut down to 1 year is a current discussion. After one year, the person, or year and a half, we still have discussion about the terms. And after that time, the person needs to decide whether they will go into full-scale governmental service or they return to business. By that time, we hope the service will be reformed completely. Very important conditions: full independence of state agency in making decision. Accepting candidate to the service or not. Adequacy of level of pay. This is very important. The level of remuneration cannot surpass previous salary they received and average on the market. The previous job can remain open to this employee if employer agrees. Several aspects to authorize foundation. These foundations could be approved by cabinet of ministers and administration of president. The management of such foundation should be led by leading experts, representatives of international and Ukrainian organizations that have a high trust level. The sources of forming this foundation would be transparent donations from private and legal persons, as well as grants and sponsors. Conformity to conditions of employment is another condition, and lack of conflict of interest. Public reporting about attracting funds and reporting on current distribution of funds, what positions, what persons, etc. Specialists that could be attracted by such model. Citizens of Ukraine, ages no younger than 26, full higher education. In last 5 years, they were not supposed to work in government institutions. They have a report on their income for last 5 years, no conflict of interest. This has to be verified. Where such models exist for us to understand where do we take a model. Australia, Great Britain. One of the specialists that participates in development has gone through such temporary employment at British government and Canada. Other countries have similar mechanisms. Countries with developing economy, like Georgia, Soros Foundation has helped creating such foundation. And another issue, when we are completing the draft law, it was developed by Alexander Markov, Andrei Prochenko from PwC, Deloitte, Marchenko, Denis Brodsky, RPR, Olga Basak, Management Consulting, Vasil Kisil and Partners, and many others. I'd like to list these people because, as you hear, these are representatives of leading organizations that worked and continue to work to create such a draft law, and this is temporary instrument, and we foresee that this instrument should be cancelled as soon as we have a full law on governmental service. This is a small story about the development that we have announced during a roundtable, and I just gave you small details. And now the processes that continue, and we talked about them previously. The question of primary reforms like anti-corruption law, unfortunately, didn't go through the parliament. We did not have 8 votes. I think this will happen in the new parliament. 3G question. We are still expecting the decision of Cabinet of Ministers that this decree will be passed. It goes through all coordination steps, which is a difficult process in Cabinet of Ministers. I think this will happen soon. In many other issues, there are working groups like electronic signature, e-governance, and electronic procurement, a reform of civil service, reform of healthcare. We have strategic group in Ministry of Healthcare and working group that works on tax reform led by a group led by Igor Belousov. Vladimir Groisman leads the team on decentralization. This is a difficult process. All teams work. Many issues need to be considered and many options need to be discussed. At this, I'd like to conclude, and I'd like to answer your questions. Thank you, Dmytro. We have several questions. This independent agency, who will appoint it? You're talking about foundation or the agency who will do the competition and do all the checks? And well, this mechanism will be installed. In order for this mechanism to be created, we need to pass this law in the parliament, and it will be in the new parliament as instrument, because we need instrument for transition process. We're talking about foundation, but the question is what kind of foundation that will be. This is still open question, because the initiative to create such foundation was discussed from May with many international donors, business organizations who were willing to send their representatives, but they had to create a legal mechanism that would allow to involve business representatives in civil service temporarily and to compensate their participation without using state budget. I think next year that will be realistic, not before. 112 Ukraine. European Union says that after presidential election, the reform process has been delayed after presidential election. If we talk about process of delaying and slowing the reforms, well, we have political issues like in Cabinet of Ministers and Parliament. The Parliament does not vote, or there is sabotage of voting, and even significant and non-significant reforms are not passed. Society demands, Western partners expect, yet we do not see that happening. So there is great expectation to new parliament. We want to see new in-quality Supreme Council, Verkhovna Rada, that will be oriented at Ukraine and its vector of European direction. How Eastern situation influenced such reform. Many countries that had such reforms did not have war. We can compare examples of Georgia, or we can look at examples of military threat at South Korea. We can see examples of Israel, so this should not be a justification for not introduction of certain reforms. If we talk about deregulation or reforms, that do not require serious processing. Priest of priest of Ukrainian Orthodox Church. You gave examples of England, Canada, Australia, and Georgia. We are saying that we are taking reforms from there, but we do not stress the most important thing, the money. Who will control the money? And if there is no control over funds, if we don't remove those who steal, these reforms are in vain. That's one thing. The other thing, let me to speak. Every year we delay.
And we procrastinate. It takes a very long time, and we are pointing fingers at each other. If you cannot do that with the parliament, approach the public, and the people will help. If you suggest to violate laws, we should not violate any laws. The laws are adopted by the parliament. If we discuss resolutions of the cabinet of ministers, they are to be drafted and adopted there. Otherwise, we should amend the constitution. If you have some vision, you should present your vision in detail. Do I get it right that the main goal of this fund is to compensate for low salaries? It hasn't been created yet. It's a model. We have no option. It's either we change Resolution 268 payroll for civil servants, or we have to cancel the limitations that we have in the budget, or we have to downsize the civil service force. So it's about creation of a fund for managerial positions, not for political positions. We have to involve patriotic people who are prepared to do middle management jobs, and they have some loans, some family matters, and they need an instrument to compensate for their loss of income because of the change of position. This is an ad hoc instrument that will provide for this critical mass of professionals to be attracted to civil service. I thought to myself that now MPs have 5,000 hryvnias, but there are plenty of candidates. They come in there. I'm discussing professionals to do a lot. First of all, examination of draft laws, the regulation. We have to analyze a big scope of documents, and somebody should do it. This is quite complicated, and we need some professional force for that. Lawyers, technical experts, analysts who would be able not just to describe the situation, but to draw some conclusions. There are many issues here at Ukraine Crisis Media Center. We lack communicators for the West, and we can look on the first pages of Western periodicals, and Ukraine has disappeared from there. So we have to somehow make up for it. I'm not getting into any detail here. So what's the number of such officials, and what will be the bodies of state? But it's just the presidential administration. This will be. We understand, of course, that to create such fund, we have to find some money, and approximately it was approximately. We have $10 million a year, and that will employ 200 to 120 experts with the average wage of 3,000 US. But for high managerial positions. And the state has competitions, so the fund will provide for specific positions depending on the KPI and job description and mission. So, this is about consensus between the fund and the governmental agents. Let's imagine that there's some oblast council and they need to attract investments, and to arrange the process we need a person who has experience of investment project management, for proper communications. Maybe there's such a person, but unfortunately this person cannot be a volunteer. It should be continued. It lasts for some time, and after 3 to 4 weeks the interest subsides, and they have some things to take care of at their kitchen, so to speak. I'm just stating the fact. So we have to provide for a long-term arrangement. Focus with the requirements and criteria for the candidates you mentioned, who is going to develop them, and what will be included in addition to the requirements that you've mentioned, like of conflict of interest, for higher education over 26, and why the downsizing exercise is at let's stop at the stoppage. First of all, I would like to answer the former question. I think that we need a person or a body responsible for the change in number in the organogram, number of people in specific bodies. They have to take decision on the rearrangement or make a submission. The process is there, and again, this should be initiated by the leader. The presidential administration, this is up to the president. And we have other bodies that have to present initiatives. I don't remember who was it. This is about the reforms, but we need to come. We will come back to the previous constitution, and now we have to initiate such changes by the leaders of proper governmental bodies or those people who are in charge of such agencies. So we have to start this rearrangement, and in the nearest future there's some process of rebuilding, and we have this rearrangement. We have some qualitative changes. There are no quantitative changes. We cannot see them yet. About the criteria, I would like to list them. Nationality, Ukrainian nationality, 26 years of age, for higher education, no experience with the governmental institutions over the period of last 5 years, no declaration of income and assets, no conflict of interest, no criminal records, no records of administrative offense, and other qualification requirements that may be set up for that purpose. If we have no further questions, I'd like to thank Dmytro for the update, and we would like to announce